The entire plane falls silent as Jamal's phone call ends. The flight attendant who moments ago screamed in his face now stands frozen, her smug expression vanishing. "This aircraft is grounded," announces the captain over the intercom. Nobody knows how a 17-year-old just stopped a commercial flight. Before we dive into this shocking story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe to stay updated on more incredible true stories of justice prevailing against discrimination. How would you react if you witnessed this situation on your flight? Let's find out what led to this dramatic moment. Jamal Washington clutched his boarding pass tightly, his knuckles almost turning white from the pressure. The 17-year-old academic prodigy from South Chicago had never set foot on an airplane before. His heart raced as he joined the boarding line, mentally reviewing everything he knew about air travel from videos he'd watched in preparation. "This is it," he whispered to himself, adjusting the strap of his backpack containing his precious research materials. The prestigious National Youth Science Competition in New York represented everything he'd worked toward for years. One first-place win could mean a full scholarship, his ticket out of the neighborhood where gunshots often served as alarm clocks. Behind him in the boarding line, passengers shuffled impatiently, but Jamal remained lost in thought, remembering how his mother Deanna had surprised him with the plane ticket 3 weeks ago. "I got it, baby," she had exclaimed, tears glistening in her eyes as she presented the confirmation email. "6 months of double shifts at the hospital, but it's yours." Deanna Washington had worked herself to exhaustion as a nurse, picking up every possible overtime opportunity. She'd sacrificed new uniforms, put off car repairs, and eaten ramen noodles for weeks to afford her son's airfare. To her, this wasn't just a plane ticket, it was investing in the future she knew her brilliant son deserved. "Boarding pass, please," the gate agent's voice snapped Jamal back to the present. "Yes, sorry." He handed over his documentation, trying to look confident despite his inexperience. The agent barely glanced at him before waving him through. As Jamal stepped onto the jet bridge, his phone buzzed with a text from his best friend Anthony, "Show those rich kids what Southside brilliance looks like." Jamal smiled, drawing strength from the message. His water purification system prototype had already won the state competition, impressing judges with its low-cost design that could help communities like his own access clean drinking water. Now the national stage awaited. Stepping onto the aircraft, Jamal was greeted by a flight attendant with blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her name tag read, Sandra Blackwell. "Boarding pass," she said flatly, not meeting his eyes. Jamal noticed how her tone shifted dramatically as she greeted the middle-aged white businessman behind him. "Welcome aboard, sir. We're so happy to have you with us today. Can I help you find your seat?" Making his way down the narrow aisle, Jamal found his assigned seat, 14C, a middle seat between an elderly white couple. The man wore a golf shirt with an expensive-looking watch, while the woman clutched a designer handbag on her lap. "Excuse me," Jamal said politely. "I believe I'm in the middle seat." The couple, the Hendersons as he would later learn, exchanged a quick glance before Mr. Henderson stood up with obvious reluctance. "Watch your step, boy," he muttered as Jamal squeezed past. Mrs. Henderson subtly pulled her handbag closer as Jamal settled between them. The small gesture wasn't lost on him, he'd seen it countless times before. The immediate assumption that he posed some kind of threat was a familiar weight he carried. Trying to distract himself, Jamal pulled out his research notes. His presentation on innovative water filtration using locally sourced materials needed one final review. The system he designed could be built for under $30 but removed contaminants with nearly the efficiency of systems costing thousands. As other passengers continued boarding, Jamal observed Sandra Blackwell's interactions. Her smile appeared and disappeared depending on who she was addressing. When an older black woman struggled with her overhead luggage, Sandra watched impassively until a male passenger intervened to help. "Can I get you anything before takeoff?" Sandra asked the Hendersons, leaning over Jamal as if he weren't there. Water for both of us would be lovely, Mrs. Henderson replied. When Sandra returned with the waters, she handed them to the couple without acknowledging Jamal. After she left, he cleared his throat. "Excuse me, could I have some water too, please?" Sandra turned, her smile evaporating. "We'll be serving the entire cabin after takeoff," she replied curtly before walking away. Jamal sighed quietly and returned to his notes. This wasn't his first encounter with such treatment, and he knew it wouldn't be his last. His mind drifted to his science teacher, Mr. Rodriguez, who had become his mentor over the past 4 years. "You'll face people who'll judge you before knowing your brilliance," Mr. Rodriguez had told him. "Your job isn't to prove them wrong, it's to be so undeniably excellent they can't ignore you." Those words had carried Jamal through numerous incidents at school: the guidance counselor who suggested vocational training instead of AP classes despite his 4.0 GPA, the security guard who stopped only him and a group of students to check his hall pass, the principal who accused him of cheating when he achieved the highest score on the standardized tests. The plane began to push back from the gate. Jamal texted his mother, "On board, everything's fine. Love you." He added, "Everything's fine," to spare her worry, though he already sensed this flight might be challenging. Next, he texted Anthony, nervous about flying and the competition. "Wish you were here." As the plane taxied toward the runway, Jamal noticed Sandra giving him occasional glances. Her eyes held something beyond the usual discomfort he often encountered. There seemed to be active hostility there. The engines roared as the plane accelerated down the runway. Jamal gripped the armrests, his first takeoff both terrifying and exhilarating. As the plane lifted off, so too did his hopes. In less than 3 hours, he'd be in New York City with a chance to change his family's future forever. But the tension radiating from Sandra Blackwell suggested his journey might face turbulence that had nothing to do with weather. An hour into the flight, the cabin had settled into the steady rhythm of travel. Jamal had managed to focus on his research notes despite the occasional uncomfortable shift from Mr. Henderson whenever their elbows touched on the shared armrest. The seatbelt sign remained illuminated as the pilot navigated through patches of turbulence. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some light choppiness," the captain's voice announced over the intercom. "Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." As if on cue, the plane dipped suddenly. Jamal's complimentary water cup, balanced precariously on his tray table, tipped over, spilling its contents across his lap and research papers. "No, no, no!" Jamal exclaimed quietly, quickly lifting his notes to prevent further damage. The water had primarily soaked his jeans, but a few droplets had landed on his presentation materials. Sandra Blackwell appeared almost instantly at his side, her expression tightening as she surveyed the scene. "Sir, what happened here?" she asked sharply, emphasizing "sir" with barely disguised sarcasm. "The turbulence," Jamal explained, reaching for the tiny cocktail napkin that had come with his water. "The plane dropped and my cup spilled. Could I get some napkins, please?" Sandra's eyes narrowed. "You need to be more careful with your beverages," she said loudly enough for surrounding passengers to hear. Under her breath, she added something that sounded remarkably like typical. Jamal froze, the familiar heat of humiliation and anger rising in his chest. Before he could respond, an unexpected voice intervened. "Young man, use my tissues, Mrs. Henderson said, suddenly offering a travel pack of Kleenex from her purse, the same purse she'd clutched protectively earlier. The plane jerked quite dramatically. It could have happened to anyone. Sandra's expression flickered with surprise at the elderly woman's intervention. "I'll bring additional napkins," she said stiffly before walking away. "Thank you," Jamal said to Mrs. Henderson, genuinely surprised by her kindness. "Harold and I have been flying for 50 years, she replied quietly. "That flight attendant's behavior isn't right." Jamal nodded gratefully as he dabbed at his papers. When Sandra returned with a handful of napkins, considerably fewer than she'd provided earlier to a white passenger who'd spilled her coffee, she dropped them on Jamal's tray without a word. 20 minutes later, Jamal needed to use the restroom. He noticed the forward lavatory was vacant and made his way up the aisle. Before he could reach it, Sandra stepped directly into his path. "The forward lavatory is reserved for first-class passengers," she stated firmly. "Please use the rear facilities." "I'm sorry, I didn't know," Jamal replied, turning to head toward the back of the plane. As he waited in line for the rear bathroom, Jamal observed another passenger, a white teenager approximately his age, use the forward lavatory without any intervention from Sandra. When the boy emerged, Sandra even offered him a friendly smile. Inside the tiny bathroom, Jamal took a deep breath. He'd experienced enough discrimination in his young life to recognize the pattern emerging. He took out his phone and made notes of each incident so far, recording times and details while they remained fresh in his memory. His mother had always taught him to document unfair treatment, advice that had proven valuable more than once. Returning to his seat, Jamal noticed other passengers of color on the flight, an Indian family in the row ahead, an older black businessman across the aisle, and a young Latina woman a few rows forward. As he observed carefully, he noticed Sandra's interactions with them all shared the same dismissive quality she'd shown him. "Water service without a smile," the black businessman commented quietly as Jamal passed his seat. Their eyes met in silent understanding. Another flight attendant, a younger man whose name tag read, Kyle Peters, seemed to notice the dynamics at play. When he passed through the cabin with the snack service, he made a point of being especially courteous to Jamal. "Would you like pretzels or cookies?" Kyle asked with genuine warmth. "Pretzels, please," Jamal replied. "Good choice. And here's an extra water," Kyle added discreetly, placing it on Jamal's tray. "Stay hydrated." The small gesture of kindness stood in stark contrast to Sandra's behavior. As Kyle moved on, Jamal caught Sandra watching the interaction from the galley, her expression darkening. Jamal's mind flashed back to a conversation with his mother after a store security guard had followed him through a department store last year. "It's exhausting, baby, I know," Deanna had told him. "But remember what Maya Angelou said, you may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them." Those words echoed in Jamal's mind as he noticed Sandra continuing to watch him like a hawk, waiting for him to make a mistake. Despite his efforts to remain inconspicuous, it seemed his mere presence on the flight had somehow offended her. The tension in the cabin was building, subtle but unmistakable, like the pressure change before a storm. The flight progressed with an uneasy calm for the next 30 minutes. Jamal had returned to reviewing his presentation, trying to ignore the occasional glances from Sandra Blackwell as she patrolled the aisle. The Hendersons beside him had grown notably less tense, with Mrs. Henderson even asking him politely about the papers he was studying. "It's a water purification system I designed," Jamal explained, surprised by her interest. "It uses locally available materials to create affordable filters for communities without clean water access." "That's quite impressive for someone your age," Mr. Henderson remarked, genuine surprise evident in his voice. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft chime from Jamal's phone. He quickly pulled it from his pocket to check the notification. It was a text message from Dr. Franklin, his science competition mentor. Competition schedule changed. Presentation slots moved up. "Call me when you land for details." The message had barely registered when Sandra Blackwell swooped down on him like a hawk spotting prey. "Your phone should be in airplane mode," she announced loudly, her voice carrying across several rows. "That's a violation of federal regulations." Jamal looked up, startled by her sudden appearance and accusatory tone. "It is in airplane mode," he explained calmly, turning his screen to show her the airplane icon. "I just received a cached message that came through when I connected to the plane's Wi-Fi." Around them, numerous passengers were using phones, tablets, and laptops, a common sight on any modern flight. A businessman across the aisle was actively conducting a FaceTime call using the in-flight Wi-Fi, something Sandra had walked past without comment multiple times. "Don't tell me how the technology works," Sandra snapped, her voice growing louder. "I need you to surrender your device immediately." Passengers nearby began to turn in their seats, attention drawn by Sandra's escalating tone. Jamal felt his heart rate increasing but maintained his composure. "I'm sorry, but I'm not breaking any rules. The flight announcement specifically said phones are permitted in airplane mode with Wi-Fi enabled," he explained, his voice steady despite his internal anxiety. "My phone contains all my research for the national science competition I'm traveling to attend." Sandra's expression hardened. "I don't care what it contains. When a flight attendant gives you an instruction, federal law requires you to comply." She extended her hand. "Give me the phone now, or I'll be forced to report you as uncooperative." The confrontation had now attracted attention from throughout the cabin. Some passengers had begun recording the interaction discreetly. Jamal noticed an older black woman shaking her head sadly, as though witnessing something all too familiar. "Ma'am," Jamal said, maintaining remarkable poise for a teenager being publicly humiliated, "I'm following all the rules. I can put my phone away completely if that's the concern, but I can't give you my personal property." Sandra's face flushed with anger. "Are you refusing to comply with crew member instructions? That's considered threatening behavior on an aircraft." The accusation hung in the air. The loaded word, threatening, applied to a black teenager who had done nothing wrong. It was a familiar tactic Jamal had seen before, the rapid escalation from minor interaction to criminalization. "He's not being threatening at all," a new voice interjected. Mr. Henderson, who had been silently observing, suddenly spoke up. "The young man is being perfectly reasonable. I've been sitting next to him the entire flight, and his behavior has been exemplary." Sandra appeared momentarily thrown by the elderly white man's defense of Jamal. She hadn't expected this alliance. "Sir, you don't understand the situation," she began, but Mr. Henderson cut her off. "I understand perfectly well. I've been watching how you've treated this young man differently from other passengers since we boarded. My wife and I both have." Mrs. Henderson nodded in agreement, her earlier wariness completely transformed. Sandra's professional mask slipped further. "This passenger has been disruptive and uncooperative throughout the flight. Now he's refusing to follow safety instructions." "That's simply not true," Mrs. Henderson said firmly. "We've been sitting right here. Nothing you're saying reflects what we've witnessed." Murmurs of agreement came from several nearby passengers who had observed the pattern of behavior. Sandra's isolation was becoming apparent as the tide of public opinion turned. "If you don't hand over that phone immediately," Sandra threatened, leaning closer to Jamal, "I'll have security personnel meet this aircraft when we land." "Is that what you want?" The threat was clear, an intimidation tactic designed to force compliance through fear. For a black teenager, the prospect of being met by airport security or police carried implications and dangers that Sandra was undoubtedly aware of. Jamal felt a cold wave of fear wash over him. He thought of his mother, how worried she would be if he called her from airport detention. He thought of missing his competition, losing his chance at a scholarship, all because of this unwarranted confrontation. But deeper than his fear was a sense of profound injustice. He had done nothing wrong, broken no rules. Surrendering now would only reinforce the pattern that had played out countless times before, capitulation to unfair treatment out of self-preservation. "I'm sorry," Jamal said, his voice quiet but firm as he slipped his phone into his pocket. "I'm not breaking any rules, and I'm not giving you my property. If you'd like to discuss this with the captain, I'm happy to explain my position to them as well." The cabin had grown remarkably quiet, the tension palpable as passengers watched the standoff reach its breaking point. Sandra's face contorted with barely contained rage at being challenged. "That's it," she hissed. "You've made your choice." She turned and stormed toward the front of the aircraft, presumably to speak with the captain. As she departed, Jamal exhaled slowly, his hands trembling slightly from the adrenaline coursing through his system. He wasn't sure what would happen next, but he knew this confrontation had escalated beyond any reasonable proportion. You handled that with remarkable dignity, young man, Mr. Henderson said quietly. Far more than I would have at your age. Thank you for speaking up, Jamal replied, genuinely moved by the unexpected support. It was the right thing to do, Mrs. Henderson added. Though I fear this isn't over yet. Her words hung ominously in the air as they waited for Sandra's return, the flight now carrying a charge of anticipation throughout the cabin. Sandra Blackwell's rigid posture and clipped strides betrayed her fury as she disappeared behind the curtain separating the main cabin from the cockpit area. The tension she left in her wake spread through the plane like ripples on a pond. Passengers exchanged glances, some confused, others concerned, many now fully aware of the racially charged confrontation they had witnessed. This is outrageous, muttered a woman 2 rows ahead, just loud enough to be heard. That poor boy didn't do anything wrong. You didn't see everything, countered an older man across the aisle. Flight attendants have authority for a reason. Rules are rules. These opposing sentiments quickly divided the cabin. Some passengers deliberately avoided looking in Jamal's direction, uncomfortable with the situation or unwilling to become involved. Others made pointed eye contact, offering silent support. Are you okay? Mrs. Henderson asked Jamal quietly, her earlier suspicion completely transformed into concern. Yes, ma'am, Jamal replied, though his racing heart suggested otherwise. This isn't the first time something like this has happened. That makes it worse, not better, Mr. Henderson said grimly. A tall, distinguished man in his 40s rose from his seat several rows behind and made his way forward. His confident bearing and the glimpse of a uniform under his jacket suggested he wasn't an ordinary passenger. He stopped at Jamal's row and leaned down slightly. Thomas Carter, he introduced himself in a low voice. I'm an off-duty pilot with Atlantic Airways. I've been watching what happened. Do you mind if I sit in the empty seat across from you for a moment? Mr. Henderson nodded toward the vacant seat beside him, and Thomas settled in. First thing, Thomas said to Jamal, his voice calm and measured, you haven't violated any regulations. Phones in airplane mode with Wi-Fi enabled are perfectly acceptable on this aircraft. He glanced toward the front of the plane. I recommend you document everything that's happening. Timestamp it if possible. I've already started, Jamal confirmed, showing Thomas the notes he'd been keeping. Good. If you're comfortable, record any further interactions. Do it discreetly, but it's completely legal. As Thomas provided advice, other black passengers began to make their way to Jamal's section of the plane under the guise of stretching their legs or using the restroom. Each one paused briefly, offering a word of encouragement or sharing a quick anecdote about their own treatment during the flight. She refused me a blanket but gave one to the white lady next to me, whispered an elderly black woman. Ignored my call button for 20 minutes, added a young black professional in a business suit. What began as isolated incidents suddenly formed a pattern too distinct to ignore. Sandra Blackwell wasn't just targeting Jamal, she had been discriminating against passengers of color throughout the flight. A young white woman with vibrant blue hair and multiple cameras hanging around her neck approached next. I'm Zoe Taylor, she said, showing Jamal her phone. I run a travel and social justice channel. I've been recording since she first confronted you. With your permission, I'd like to live stream if this escalates further. People need to see this. Before Jamal could respond, Sandra returned to the cabin with Kyle, the other flight attendant, trailing behind her. Kyle's expression revealed his discomfort with the situation. The captain has been informed of your disruptive behavior, Sandra announced loudly as she approached Jamal. We're evaluating next steps. Thomas Carter stood up, his presence commanding immediate attention. Ms. Blackwell, he said, his pilot's uniform now clearly visible beneath his jacket, I believe there's been a misunderstanding about the electronic device policy. Sandra faltered momentarily at the unexpected intervention from another airline employee. This doesn't concern you, she said stiffly. Actually, as an Atlantic Airways pilot, passenger safety and appropriate enforcement of regulations very much concern me, Thomas replied evenly. This young man has not violated any policies. As this exchange unfolded, Jamal quietly retrieved his phone and dialed his mother. When Deanna Washington answered, he kept his voice low. "Mom, I'm having a situation on the flight. The attendant is discriminating against me and threatening to have security meet the plane." "What? Baby, are you okay?" Deanna's voice crackled with concern. "I'm fine, but it's getting serious. She's claiming I'm breaking rules by having my phone on airplane mode." As Jamal explained the situation, a remarkable coincidence revealed itself, one that would dramatically alter the power dynamics at play. "Jamal, listen to me carefully," Deanna said, her voice suddenly taking on a different tone. "Mrs. Williams is here at the hospital right now for her checkup. I'm going to speak with her immediately." "Mrs. Williams?" Jamal questioned. "Diane Williams, Robert Williams' wife. The CEO of Atlantic Airways. I've been her primary nurse since her cardiac episode last year." The connection was so unexpected that Jamal almost dropped his phone. His mother, a dedicated nurse who had worked double shifts for months to afford his plane ticket, happened to be the caregiver for the wife of the very airline's chief executive. "Stay on the line," Deanna instructed. "I'm walking to her private room right now." Meanwhile, the confrontation continued to escalate. Sandra had begun documenting Jamal's infractions on an official form, dramatically writing down fabricated offenses while standing in the aisle. "I've noted your refusal to comply with crew instructions and unauthorized use of electronic devices," she announced. "We'll be diverting to Pittsburgh due to the situation on board." As if on cue, the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to a situation on board, we'll be making an unscheduled landing in Pittsburgh. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." A collective groan spread through the cabin, followed by angry murmurs. Sandra shot Jamal a triumphant look. "This is what happens when passengers don't follow the rules," she said loudly enough for those nearby to hear. "Now everyone's trip is delayed because of your dangerous behavior." The accusation hung in the air, a black teenager characterized as dangerous for nothing more than refusing to surrender his property while following all stated rules. "That's absolutely false," Thomas Carter stated firmly. "And I'll be submitting a formal report saying so." Zoe Taylor had her phone out now, live streaming the incident as tensions escalated. "I'm documenting an apparent case of racial profiling on Atlantic Airways Flight 1437, she narrated quietly to her followers. "A black teenager is being accused of rule violations that multiple witnesses, including an off-duty pilot, confirm aren't actually violations." The live stream viewer count climbed rapidly as Zoe captured the unfolding scene. Social media was responding in real time to the injustice playing out at 30,000 feet. Thomas discreetly showed Jamal his own phone, where news alerts were already beginning to appear, racial profiling allegations on Atlantic Airways flight, and live stream shows black teen targeted by flight attendant. While this unfolded, Kyle pulled Jamal aside during a moment when Sandra was distracted. "This isn't the first time," he whispered. "There have been complaints before. Multiple. HR has a file on her, but nothing ever happens." Before Jamal could process this information, another passenger slipped him a business card. "Civil rights attorney," the woman explained quietly. "Call me when you land." The plane began its descent toward Pittsburgh as the situation seemed to be spiraling beyond anyone's control. Jamal remained on the phone with his mother, who was now with Mrs. Williams. Suddenly, Jamal's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hold tight. This is being addressed at the highest level. RW, are you watching this unfold right now? Type number 1 in the comments if you've ever witnessed or experienced discrimination while traveling. Hit the like button if you believe everyone deserves to be treated with dignity regardless of their race. Subscribe to follow stories of justice and accountability like Jamal's. What would you do if you were sitting next to Jamal on this flight? Would you speak up or stay silent? As the plane begins its descent, What do you think will happen next? Will Jamal's unexpected connection turn the tables on Sandra? The aircraft banked sharply as it prepared for its unscheduled landing in Pittsburgh. Passengers clutched their armrests, tense not only from the descent but from the charged atmosphere permeating the cabin. Jamal remained on the phone with his mother, speaking in hushed tones while Sandra Blackwell periodically shot disapproving glances his way. "Mom, we're apparently being diverted to Pittsburgh," Jamal explained quietly. "She's making it sound like I'm some kind of security threat." "Stay calm, baby," Deanna Washington's voice was steady despite her obvious concern. "I'm with Mrs. Williams right now. She's already contacted her husband." What most passengers aboard Flight 1437 didn't know, what Sandra Blackwell certainly didn't know, was that Deanna Washington wasn't just any nurse at Chicago Memorial Hospital. 14 months earlier, Diane Williams, wife of Atlantic Airways CEO Robert Williams, had collapsed during a charity gala. Rushed to the emergency room with a life-threatening cardiac arrhythmia, she had been placed under Deanna's care. During those critical hours, Deanna had not only provided exceptional medical attention but had stayed past her shift to monitor Diane's condition personally. In the weeks of recovery that followed, a deep bond formed between the two women, Diane, a wealthy executive's wife, and Deanna, a hardworking single mother from South Chicago. "Deanna saved my life," Diane was now saying in the background of the call. "And she's been my guardian angel through recovery. Let me speak to your son." Jamal heard rustling as the phone changed hands. "Jamal. This is Diane Williams," a confident female voice came through the speaker. "Robert is already on the line with the Flight Operations Center. I want you to know this situation is being handled at the highest level." As this conversation occurred, the plane suddenly leveled off. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom, "Ladies and gentlemen, we've been instructed to return to our original flight path to New York. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." A confused murmur spread throughout the cabin. Sandra's expression transformed from smug satisfaction to bewilderment. She immediately headed toward the cockpit, her stride betraying her agitation. "Something big just happened," Thomas Carter said quietly to Jamal. "Flight plans don't change mid-diversion without serious cause. Especially not with a reported situation on board." Jamal nodded, still processing Diane Williams' words. The connection between his mother and the airline CEO's wife seemed almost too coincidental to believe, yet it was unfolding in real time. "Flight attendants, prepare for landing," the captain announced, indicating they were continuing to New York after all. Sandra emerged from the cockpit, her face noticeably pale. She avoided looking in Jamal's direction as she mechanically began preparing the cabin for arrival. The shift in power dynamics was palpable. Thomas leaned closer to Jamal. "As a pilot, I can tell you that someone with serious authority just countermanded that diversion. That doesn't happen without direct intervention from operations leadership." Jamal's phone rang. The caller ID displayed a number he didn't recognize. "Hello," he answered cautiously. "Jamal Washington. This is Robert Williams, CEO of Atlantic Airways." The teenager's eyes widened as the airline's chief executive introduced himself. Around him, passengers were starting to notice something unusual was happening. "Yes, sir," Jamal replied, his voice steady despite his surprise. "I want to personally apologize for the treatment you've experienced aboard our aircraft today," Williams said, his tone both professional and genuinely contrite. "It's completely unacceptable and contradicts everything our airline stands for." Jamal put the call on speaker, allowing Thomas and the Hendersons to hear. Williams continued, "I've instructed the captain to return to your original destination. When you land, a member of our executive team will meet you to ensure you reach your science competition without further incident." As Williams spoke, Sandra returned to the cabin. She froze when she heard the voice coming from Jamal's phone, a voice she clearly recognized. Furthermore, Williams continued, "I want you to know that we take allegations of discriminatory behavior extremely seriously. The situation will be thoroughly investigated. The timing couldn't have been more dramatic. As Sandra stood paralyzed in the aisle, the captain's voice came over the intercom. "This is Captain Mitchell speaking. I've been instructed by airline management that this aircraft is grounded upon arrival in New York. All crew members will be required to meet with airline representatives before operating further flights. We apologize for any inconvenience to connecting passengers." The cabin erupted in confused conversation. Grounded? What's happening? Is this because of that flight attendant? Sandra's face drained of all color as she realized the implications. Her eyes darted to Jamal's phone, then to Thomas in his pilot's uniform, then to the numerous passengers who were now openly recording the situation. The power she had wielded so confidently minutes ago had evaporated completely. "Mr. Williams," Jamal said into the phone, his voice clear and measured despite the chaos around him, "thank you for your intervention. I just wanted to reach my science competition without trouble." "And you will," Williams assured him. "My wife has told me about your mother, how she provided exceptional care during Diane's health crisis last year. Deanna Washington quite literally saved my wife's life. The least I can do is ensure her son is treated with the dignity and respect every passenger deserves." As this conversation played out for all nearby passengers to hear, a remarkable transformation occurred throughout the cabin. Those who had looked away earlier now watched intently. Those who had questioned Jamal's account now saw the situation with fresh clarity. Sandra attempted to retreat to the galley, but passengers called out questions as she passed. "Was this racial profiling?" someone demanded. "Are you going to be suspended?" asked another. Sandra's training failed her as she stammered, "I was just following protocols." "No, you weren't," Thomas Carter stated firmly. "As an Atlantic Airways pilot, I can confirm that nothing this young man did violated any company or FAA protocol." The revelation that Jamal's mother had saved the life of the CEO's wife spread through the cabin like wildfire, transforming the narrative completely. What had begun as a routine flight had become a stark illustration of how quickly discrimination could escalate, and how unexpectedly justice could arrive. As the plane began its final approach to New York, Jamal experienced an emotion he hadn't anticipated: compassion. Despite everything Sandra had put him through, he recognized that her behavior stemmed from prejudices deeply ingrained and rarely challenged. While he didn't excuse her actions, he understood them as part of a larger societal problem. "Mr. Williams," Jamal said, "I appreciate your handling of this situation. I hope it leads to positive changes in how all passengers are treated." "It will," Williams promised. "This incident has highlighted areas where we need improvement, from crew training to accountability systems. Sometimes it takes a situation like this to expose problems we've overlooked." What Williams said next revealed that his connection to the situation went deeper than just his wife's medical care. "Jamal, when I was starting out in the airline industry 30 years ago, I experienced similar treatment as a young black professional. Many doors were closed to me because of my race. It was only through the mentorship of a few key individuals that I managed to advance. Your generation shouldn't have to face these same barriers." The plane touched down in New York with a gentle bump. As passengers prepared to disembark, the dynamics had completely reversed. Sandra Blackwell, once so confident in her authority, now stood rigid and isolated. Jamal Washington, initially targeted and humiliated, was surrounded by support from strangers who had become allies. As the seatbelt sign turned off, security personnel boarded the aircraft, not to escort Jamal away as Sandra had threatened, but to speak with her. The airline's response had been swift and decisive. "Miss Blackwell, please gather your personal items," one of the security officers said professionally. "You're being placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Please come with us." The passenger cabin watched in stunned silence as Sandra was escorted off the aircraft. The justice of the moment was not lost on anyone present. Kyle, the other flight attendant, approached Jamal before he departed. "I should have done more sooner," he admitted. "I'm sorry it took this to make me speak up." Jamal nodded his acceptance of the apology. As he gathered his belongings and prepared to disembark, he realized that his water purification project, designed to bring clean resources to communities in need, wasn't the only thing with the power to create positive change. Sometimes, standing firm against injustice could ripple outward in ways no one could predict. The terminal at JFK International Airport buzzed with unusual activity for a routine domestic arrival. As passengers from Flight 1437 streamed into the gate area, they were met by a phalanx of airline representatives in crisp uniforms, each bearing the executive insignia of Atlantic Airways. Among them stood a distinguished man in his 60s, Robert Williams himself, the CEO whose unexpected intervention had transformed the trajectory of the flight. Jamal Washington stepped into the terminal, his backpack containing his precious research slung over one shoulder. The contrast between his arrival and the departure he'd imagined couldn't have been more stark. Instead of anonymously making his way to the science competition venue, he found himself at the center of a corporate and media storm. Jamal, Robert Williams approached, extending his hand. "I'm Robert Williams. Thank you for speaking with me during the flight. I wanted to meet you in person." The teenager shook the CEO's hand firmly, just as his mother had taught him. "Thank you for your help, sir." Behind them, Sandra Blackwell was being escorted through a side door by airline security and human resources personnel. Her face was masked with professional stoicism, but the rigid set of her shoulders betrayed her distress. "Mr. Williams," Jamal said, watching Sandra's departure, "what's going to happen to her?" The question revealed Jamal's character. Even after experiencing discrimination and humiliation, his concern extended to the consequences for the person who had mistreated him. "She's been placed on immediate administrative leave," Williams explained. "There will be a thorough investigation. But between the numerous witness statements, the video evidence, and the pattern of previous complaints that have come to light, I don't anticipate she'll be returning to passenger service." Thomas Carter, the off-duty pilot who had supported Jamal during the confrontation, joined them. "Sir," he addressed Williams, "I'd like to submit a formal statement about what I witnessed." "Of course, Thomas," Williams nodded. "And I want to thank you for stepping in. That's the kind of moral courage we need more of in this industry." As they spoke, Jamal noticed Zoe Taylor, the social media influencer who had live-streamed the incident, surrounded by a small crowd of reporters. Her live stream had apparently gone viral, drawing media attention that had mobilized with remarkable speed. "The video has over 2 million views already," Kyle informed them, checking his phone. "It's being picked up by major news networks." Williams turned to Jamal. "This is likely to get a lot of attention. How do you feel about that?" Jamal considered the question carefully. "I didn't want any of this," he said truthfully. "I just wanted to get to my science competition. But if what happened helps prevent similar situations for others, then some good can come from it." Williams nodded approvingly. "That's a mature perspective. Speaking of your competition, we have a car waiting to take you directly to your hotel. Your presentation is tomorrow, correct?" "Yes, sir. 9 a.m. "You'll be there with plenty of time to prepare," Williams assured him. "And I've taken the liberty of upgrading your return flight to first class." As they walked through the terminal, Williams shared something unexpected with Jamal. "You know, this situation resonates with me personally," the CEO said, his voice quieter now. "When I was starting out in this industry in the 80s, I faced similar discrimination. On my first cross-country flight as a junior operations manager, a flight attendant asked me to prove I wasn't supposed to be serving the beverages rather than observing cabin procedures." Jamal listened intently as Williams continued. "I almost quit aviation altogether that day. But a senior executive who witnessed the incident took me under his wing. He didn't just apologize, he created pathways for advancement that hadn't existed before. He turned that moment of discrimination into institutional change." The parallel was clear. Williams saw in Jamal's situation an echo of his own past, and an opportunity to be that same catalyst for transformation. Outside the terminal, a sleek black car waited at the curb. As they approached, Jamal's phone rang, his mother calling to check on him after landing. "Mom, everything's okay," he assured her. "I'm with Mr. Williams now. They're taking me to the hotel." "Oh, thank God," Deanna's relief was palpable even through the phone. "Mrs. Williams is still here with me. She wants to know if you need anything." "Just wish me luck for tomorrow," Jamal replied. After ending the call, Jamal turned to Williams. "My mom said to thank you and Mrs. Williams." "Your mother saved Diane's life," Williams said simply. "That's a debt I can never fully repay. But more importantly, what happened on that plane today was wrong, connection or no connection. It would have been wrong if it happened to any passenger." Before Jamal could respond, his phone buzzed with notifications. The video of the incident had indeed gone viral, with hashtag Justice for Jamal and hashtag Flying While Black trending across multiple platforms. News helicopters circled above the airport, and reporters were gathering at the terminal entrance, alerted to the story by Zoe's livestream and subsequent social media explosion. "You don't have to speak to them," Williams assured him, noticing Jamal's concerned expression as he eyed the media presence. "Actually," Jamal said after a moment's consideration, "I think I should say something. Not just about what happened to me, but about what it represents." Williams studied the young man with newfound respect. "If you're comfortable doing so, the company will support you fully." As they approached the gathered media, Jamal straightened his shoulders. At 17, he was about to address national news cameras about racial discrimination, a burden no teenager should have to carry, yet one he was remarkably prepared to handle. "I'll keep it brief," he told Williams. "My focus needs to be on my presentation tomorrow." The cameras turned toward Jamal as he stepped forward, poised beyond his years despite the circumstances that had thrust him into the spotlight. "Today, I experienced something that too many people of color face while simply trying to exist in public spaces," he began, his voice clear and steady. "What began as a minor misunderstanding was escalated because of assumptions made about me based on my race." Reporters held microphones closer as Jamal continued. "I'm grateful for the intervention of Atlantic Airways leadership and the support of fellow passengers who recognized the injustice occurring. I'm a student scientist heading to a national competition, not a disruption or a threat. All I ask is to be judged by my actions and character, not by biases about who I might be based on my appearance." The maturity and eloquence of his statement left many journalists visibly moved. As questions began to fly, Williams stepped in. "Jamal has a national science competition tomorrow that could determine his academic future," the CEO stated firmly. "He'll be available for more detailed interviews afterward if he chooses. For now, Atlantic Airways is conducting a thorough investigation into this incident and reviewing our training protocols to ensure nothing like this happens again." As they finally entered the waiting car, Thomas Carter handed Jamal his business card. "If you ever consider aviation as a career," the pilot said, "call me directly. We need more young men like you in this industry." The car pulled away from the curb, leaving the media frenzy behind. Inside the quiet interior, Jamal finally allowed himself to process the whirlwind of events that had transformed what should have been a routine flight into a moment that might well change airline practices. "You handled that admirably," Williams commented. "Many adults wouldn't have shown such composure." "My mom always says dignity can't be taken, only surrendered," Jamal replied. Williams nodded thoughtfully. "Wise words. Now, let's get you to your hotel so you can focus on what really matters, your science project. What exactly is your research about?" As Jamal began explaining his water purification system, the car moved through the New York streets, carrying him toward the competition that had been his focus all along. Despite the unexpected detour into racial politics and viral fame, his primary goal remained unchanged: to create technology that could help communities like his own access clean water. The power had shifted not just on the airplane, but perhaps in a small way within the larger systems that allowed such discrimination to persist. One teenager's refusal to accept unjust treatment, combined with unexpected connections and allies, had created a moment of accountability that would ripple far beyond Flight 1437. By the time Jamal Washington reached his hotel room, the incident aboard Flight 1437 had evolved from a viral social media moment into a full-blown national news story. Every major network had picked up the footage captured by Zoe Taylor's live stream, with commentators and analysts dissecting the confrontation from every possible angle. Atlantic Airways flight grounded after racial profiling incident, read the CNN Chiron as Jamal flipped through channels in his room. Teen scientist faces discrimination at 30,000 feet, proclaimed the headline on MSNBC. Airline CEO takes unprecedented action after flight attendant confronts black passenger, Fox News reported. Jamal sat on the edge of the bed, his science competition materials spread around him, trying to maintain focus on tomorrow's presentation despite the media tornado swirling around him. His phone buzzed constantly with notifications, interview requests from journalists, messages of support from strangers, and texts from friends and family who had seen him on the news. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Opening it, he found a hotel staff member with a basket of fruit and snacks. "Compliments of Atlantic Airways, sir," the young woman said, her eyes widening with recognition. "Oh, you're him. I just saw you on the news." "Thank you," Jamal replied, accepting the basket with a polite smile. As the door closed, his phone rang. Anthony, his best friend from Chicago. "Bro." Anthony's excited voice burst through the speaker. "You're literally everywhere right now. My mom just called me into the living room to see you on national news." "It's crazy," Jamal admitted. "I was just trying to get to this competition." "How are you handling it? You looked so calm on TV." Trying to stay focused, Jamal explained, glancing at his presentation materials. "This scholarship is still my priority. The whole neighborhood is talking about it," Anthony continued. "Ms. Jenkins from the community center has organized a viewing party for your competition live stream tomorrow. Everyone's rooting for you, now more than ever." The conversation with Anthony grounded Jamal, reconnecting him to the community and aspirations that had set him on this journey in the first place. After they hung up, another call came through, this one from the Hendersons, the elderly couple who had sat beside him on the flight. "Jamal, it's Harold and Elizabeth Henderson," the gentleman's voice came through. "We wanted to check that you're alright after everything today." "I'm doing fine, thank you," Jamal replied, genuinely touched by their concern. "And thank you again for speaking up on the plane. It meant a lot." "We should have said something sooner," Elizabeth Henderson admitted. "When you first sat down, I'm ashamed to say we had our own preconceptions. By the end of that flight, we'd learned an important lesson about assumptions and prejudice. If you ever need anything while you're in New York, or witnesses for any proceedings with the airline, you have our contact information," Harold added. "We're fully prepared to testify about what we observed." This transformation, from initial wariness to active allyship, represented something profound about the possibility for change when people witnessed injustice directly and chose to stand against it. After the call ended, Jamal returned to his competition preparations, only to be interrupted by another knock. This time, it was Robert Williams again, accompanied by two other Atlantic Airways executives. "Sorry to disturb your evening, Jamal," Williams said. "I wanted to update you personally on developments and introduce our Chief Diversity Officer, Patricia Hayes, and our General Counsel, David Mercer." The executives entered the room, their expressions serious but respectful. First, Williams began, "Sandra Blackwell has been terminated, effective immediately. Our preliminary investigation uncovered a pattern of similar incidents that had been reported but inadequately addressed. The company bears responsibility for failing to act on those earlier complaints." Patricia Hayes, a distinguished black woman in her 50s, spoke next. "We're implementing immediate changes to our training protocols and reporting systems. What happened to you highlighted serious gaps in our accountability structures." Additionally, Mercer added, "We've discovered that Ms. Blackwell's brother is an administrator at Northern Illinois University, where you applied for a scholarship last year." This revelation stunned Jamal. "Dr. Blackwell? He told me my application was lost. I had to resubmit everything at the last minute." "That appears to have been deliberate," Mercer confirmed grimly. "We've contacted the university with our concerns about potential academic discrimination." The connection was almost too coincidental to believe. The flight attendant who had targeted him was related to an administrator who had attempted to sabotage his academic opportunities. The pattern of discrimination extended beyond the flight, revealing how prejudice could manifest across different aspects of a young black man's life. As the executives departed, promising ongoing support, Jamal's phone buzzed with a text from Zoe Taylor. "My video just hit 5 million views. National civil rights organizations are calling for industry-wide reviews of airline discrimination. You've sparked something important." Attached to her message was a compilation of news clips. In one, a black former flight attendant detailed her experiences witnessing racial profiling of passengers. In another, transportation officials discussed potential policy reviews. A third showed other passengers from Flight 1437 giving interviews about what they had observed. The media storm was bringing to light stories that had previously gone untold, systemic issues that had affected countless travelers who lacked the unexpected connection that had protected Jamal. Later that evening, Jamal participated in a brief Zoom call with his science competition team advisor, Dr. Franklin, who had been monitoring the situation from afar. "The competition organizers are aware of what happened," Dr. Franklin explained. "They've assured me it won't affect your judging in any way. Focus on your presentation, this is still about your brilliant research." "That's all I wanted from the beginning," Jamal replied. "Your mother called me," Dr. Franklin added. "She's incredibly proud of how you handled yourself. We all are." After the call, Jamal stood by the hotel window, looking out at the New York skyline illuminated against the night sky. 24 hours ago, he had been in his bedroom in South Chicago, nervously packing for his first flight. Now he was at the center of a national conversation about race, privilege, and accountability. His phone chimed with an email notification, a statement from Atlantic Airways announcing a comprehensive review of their training protocols and the establishment of a passenger advocacy office to address discrimination complaints. The company was also creating a scholarship fund for minority students interested in aviation careers, with Thomas Carter appointed to lead the initiative. The incident that had begun with a flight attendant's prejudice was catalyzing institutional changes that could benefit countless future travelers. While Jamal took no pleasure in Sandra's termination, he recognized the importance of accountability in creating systemic change. As he finally returned to his competition materials, preparing for the presentation that had been his original purpose, Jamal reflected on how quickly life could change direction, much like Flight 1437 itself had been diverted and then rerouted. The science competition that had been his sole focus now shared space with an unexpected role as a catalyst for conversations about racial equity in travel. With renewed determination, Jamal rehearsed his presentation late into the night, his water purification project a reminder of his core mission, creating solutions that could help communities like his own. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but he would face them with the same dignity and resolve he had shown aboard that flight. The morning sun streamed through the hotel room curtains as Jamal adjusted his tie in the mirror. Despite the media whirlwind and emotional turbulence of the previous day, he looked rested and focused. The National Youth Science Competition would begin in less than 2 hours, and his mind was now firmly fixed on the presentation he had spent months perfecting. A text message illuminated his phone screen, his mother: "Baby, I'm so proud of you. Mrs. Williams arranged for me to watch your presentation via live stream at the hospital. Show them what brilliance looks like. Love you." Jamal smiled, drawing strength from his mother's unwavering support. He texted back a quick, "Love you too," before gathering his materials. The hotel phone rang, the front desk informing him that his transportation had arrived. Rather than the standard competition shuttle, Robert Williams had arranged a private car to ensure Jamal reached the venue without harassment from reporters who had gathered in the hotel lobby. In the elevator, Jamal mentally rehearsed his opening statement one final time. The doors opened to reveal a hotel staff member waiting to escort him through a service exit, bypassing the media presence at the main entrance. "Good luck today, sir," the staff member said as they reached the waiting car. "My little brother wants to be a scientist too. What you're doing matters." These small moments of connection and support had multiplied since the incident, reminding Jamal that his journey represented something larger than himself. As the car navigated through Manhattan traffic, Jamal's phone buzzed with a news alert: Atlantic Airways announces new anti-discrimination initiatives following viral incident. The article detailed how the airline was implementing immediate changes to its training programs and hiring practices, including mandatory bias training for all customer-facing staff. The competition venue, Columbia University's prestigious Science Center, came into view. Unlike the other participants arriving by shuttle, Jamal found himself greeted by competition organizers who had been alerted to his separate transportation. Mr. Washington, a woman in a competition blazer approached. "I'm Dr. Simmons, the head judge. We're all very glad you made it despite yesterday's unfortunate circumstances." "Thank you," Jamal replied, professional and composed. "I appreciate the accommodation. Your presentation time remains unchanged, 9:45 in Auditorium B. The judges want to assure you that your evaluation will be based solely on your scientific work." As Jamal entered the building, he noticed other young competitors glancing his way with recognition. His face had been splashed across news outlets nationwide, anonymity was no longer possible. Some approached to express support, while others maintained distance, perhaps unsure how to engage with someone at the center of a national controversy. In the preparation room, Jamal connected his laptop to review his slides one final time. A tall African-American man in a pilot's uniform appeared in the doorway, Thomas Carter. "Hope you don't mind me stopping by," Thomas said. "I wanted to wish you luck in person." "You came all this way?" Jamal asked, surprised. "My schedule had me in New York today anyway," Thomas explained. "But I would have made the trip regardless. What you're doing here matters." Thomas took a seat beside Jamal. "Before you go on stage, I wanted to share something with you. 25 years ago, I was the only black student in my aviation program. During my first solo flight assessment, an instructor falsely claimed I had violated protocols. It nearly ended my career before it began." Jamal listened intently as Thomas continued. "Another instructor reviewed the flight logs and discovered the discrepancy. He not only cleared my record but became my mentor throughout my career. Yesterday, when I saw what was happening on that flight, I remembered his example. We all need someone to stand up when the systems fail us." "I appreciate you being that person yesterday," Jamal said sincerely. "Now," Thomas smiled, "tell me about this water purification system. I hear it's revolutionary." For the next 15 minutes, Jamal explained his research with the animated passion of a true scientist, temporarily forgetting the controversy that had surrounded him. Thomas asked insightful questions, genuinely interested in the technology that could help communities access clean water at a fraction of current costs. As the time for Jamal's presentation approached, a competition coordinator appeared. 5 minutes, Mr. Washington." Thomas stood to leave. "You've got this. Remember, you belonged here long before yesterday's events." Walking toward Auditorium B, Jamal passed a wall-mounted television displaying a news broadcast. A video had emerged showing Sandra Blackwell in a separate incident 6 months earlier, dismissively ignoring an Asian family's requests while attentively serving white passengers seated nearby. The pattern of behavior was undeniable, confirming that Jamal's experience had not been an isolated incident but part of a systematic problem. The auditorium doors opened to reveal a larger-than-usual audience. Word had spread about the young scientist at the center of the discrimination controversy, drawing attendees beyond the typical competition judges and participants. Jamal recognized Robert Williams sitting discreetly in the back row, along with Patricia Hayes, the airline's chief diversity officer. Next presenter, announced the moderator, Jamal Washington from South Chicago Community Academy, presenting Accessible Purification, Low-Cost Water Filtration Systems for Underserved Communities. As Jamal took the stage, the events of the previous day seemed to recede. Here, in this moment, he was exactly where he had always intended to be, sharing his research and vision for technology that could help communities like his own. His voice was clear and confident as he outlined the devastating impact of water contamination in urban and rural poor communities across America. Access to clean water isn't just an international development issue, he explained, displaying graphs of contamination levels in various American cities, including his own neighborhood in South Chicago. It's happening right here, often in communities without the resources to address it. The judges leaned forward as Jamal demonstrated how his system utilized locally available materials to create filters that removed contaminants at nearly the efficiency of systems costing thousands of dollars. His prototype, assembled for under $30, had successfully filtered lead, bacteria, and industrial pollutants in repeated tests. The beauty of this system, Jamal concluded, is that it can be assembled using materials available in any hardware store, making it accessible to communities without specialized resources. Clean water shouldn't be a luxury, it should be a right available to everyone. The question period that followed revealed the judges' genuine interest in his research. Their inquiries focused on scalability, longevity of the filters, and potential applications in different environments, all questions Jamal had anticipated and prepared for thoroughly. As he left the stage to appreciative applause, Jamal felt a wave of satisfaction that transcended the previous day's trauma. Whatever came of the airline incident, this moment, sharing his research with leading scientists who recognized its value, was the culmination of years of dedication. In the hallway outside, Robert Williams approached. "That was impressive, Jamal. Truly innovative thinking." "Thank you, sir. I have some news you might want to hear," Williams continued. "The airline board met this morning in an emergency session. Beyond the personnel changes we've already implemented, we're establishing a comprehensive passenger bill of rights with specific protections against discriminatory treatment." Patricia Hayes joined them. "We're calling it the Jamal Washington Protocol," she explained. "It creates clear reporting channels and accountability measures for discrimination complaints. If it had existed yesterday, Sandra Blackwell would have been removed from passenger service long ago. The transformation of a painful personal experience into institutional change that could protect others was perhaps the most meaningful outcome Jamal could have imagined." As the day progressed, Jamal received a call that left him momentarily speechless. His mother had been offered a promotion at the hospital, moving from floor nurse to nursing supervisor with a significant salary increase. The timing seemed suspiciously coincidental, but Deanna assured him it was based on her qualifications and long overdue recognition of her skills. "Mrs. Williams might have mentioned my work to the hospital administrator," Deanna acknowledged, "but the position was open, and I was already being considered. This just expedited the process." By evening, Jamal's phone chimed with a notification from the competition organizers. Finalists would be announced the following morning. Despite everything, his focus returned to the original purpose of his journey. The viral video, the media attention, the airline policies, all of it would fade in importance compared to the potential impact of his research being recognized and implemented. As he prepared for bed in his hotel room, Jamal reflected on the unexpected trajectory of the past 36 hours. What had begun as discrimination had transformed into something else entirely, a catalyst for change, yes, but also a powerful reminder that preparation and excellence were the strongest responses to prejudice. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges and opportunities. For now, Jamal Washington, scientist, advocate, and reluctant symbol, allowed himself a moment of quiet pride in having remained true to his purpose despite the storm that had surrounded him. 6 months later, Jamal Washington stood at a podium in the grand ballroom of the Palmer House Hilton in Chicago. Behind him, a large screen displayed the refined design of his water purification system, now branded as the Clear Access Filter. Before him sat hundreds of attendees at the National Conference on Environmental Justice and Innovation, including scientists, community activists, industry leaders, and government officials. "When I first designed this system in my mother's kitchen," Jamal began, his voice carrying confidently through the hall, "I had one goal: to create an affordable solution for communities like mine that have been systematically denied access to clean water. Today, I'm proud to announce that the Clear Access Initiative has successfully deployed over 1,000 units in 5 underserved communities across the country." The audience applauded warmly. At 18, Jamal had transformed from a promising young scientist into a recognized innovator whose work was already improving lives. The National Youth Science Competition had been just the beginning. His first place win had secured not only a full scholarship to MIT but also seed funding to develop his prototype into a deployable system. In the front row sat Deanna Washington, now the Director of Nursing Services at Chicago Memorial, beaming with pride as her son presented. Beside her sat the Hendersons, who had flown in specifically for this conference. Over the past months, they had become like grandparents to Jamal, their relationship a testament to how meaningful connections could emerge from difficult circumstances. "None of this would have been possible without the mentorship and support of many individuals," Jamal continued, acknowledging Dr. Franklin, Robert and Diane Williams, Thomas Carter, and others who had championed his work. What Jamal didn't explicitly mention, though many in the room knew, was how the infamous flight incident had unexpectedly accelerated his journey. The viral video that captured his discrimination had also captured the attention of funders, partners, and supporters who might otherwise never have learned of his innovation. Following his presentation, Jamal joined a panel discussion on innovation and access in environmental justice. As the youngest panelist by decades, he nevertheless spoke with authority born from both scientific knowledge and lived experience. "Technology alone isn't the solution," he explained during the discussion. "We need systems that ensure these innovations reach the communities that need them most. That's why the Clear Access Initiative partners directly with neighborhood organizations and trains local residents to install and maintain the filters." After the conference sessions concluded for the day, Jamal met with Robert Williams in a quiet corner of the hotel restaurant. The airline CEO had become an unexpected mentor and ally over the months since their first meeting. "The airline industry consortium has unanimously adopted the Jamal Washington Protocol," Williams informed him. "Starting next quarter, every major domestic carrier will implement the standardized reporting and response procedures for discrimination incidents." "That's tremendous news," Jamal replied, still somewhat amazed that his name had become attached to a corporate policy. "Thomas Carter is leading the implementation," Williams continued. "His promotion to diversity and inclusion executive has already led to significant changes in hiring practices across the company. The transformation extended beyond corporate policies." A class action lawsuit against Atlantic Airways, filed by passengers who had experienced similar discrimination, had been settled with the establishment of a $10 million fund for anti-racism initiatives in the transportation industry. Sandra Blackwell, meanwhile, had become a cautionary example in training programs about the consequences of discriminatory behavior. Her termination had been upheld despite multiple appeals, and her brother at Northern Illinois University had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation into his own pattern of discriminatory practices. As Jamal and Williams discussed these developments, a group of teenagers approached their table, participants in the Future Innovators program that Jamal had established with a portion of his competition winnings. "Mr. Washington," one young girl said excitedly, "we just finished the workshop on community-based design. Can we show you our prototype?" "Absolutely," Jamal replied, immediately giving them his full attention. Williams watched with appreciation as Jamal engaged with the students, asking thoughtful questions about their design for a neighborhood early warning system for air quality issues. The CEO recognized that Jamal's greatest impact might not be the water filters themselves, but his example to other young people from underserved communities. Later that evening, Jamal returned to his childhood home in South Chicago. Though he now lived in a MIT dormitory most of the year, this modest house remained his emotional center. Walking through the neighborhood, he passed the community center where his journey had begun 4 years earlier when a science program had first captured his interest. The center now housed a clear-access production and training facility, where local residents learned to assemble and maintain the filtration systems while earning living wages. What had started as a science project had evolved into community economic development. Jamal's phone rang, Thomas Carter calling from New York. "Just landed from a Tokyo flight," Thomas said. "Wanted to let you know that the international version of the protocol has been approved by the International Air Transport Association. 27 countries have signed on initially." "That's incredible," Jamal replied. "There's more," Thomas continued. "Remember that aviation mentorship program we discussed? The board approved it this morning. Full scholarships for 10 minority students each year to complete pilot training, with guaranteed positions upon certification. The systematic changes rippling outward from one incident on Flight 1437 continued to multiply, creating opportunities and protections that would benefit countless individuals in the years to come." After ending the call, Jamal sat on his childhood bed, surrounded by science trophies and now framed news articles about both his innovation and his advocacy work. On his desk sat an invitation to speak at a congressional hearing on environmental justice the following month, another platform to advance the causes he believed in. The journey that had begun with discrimination at 30,000 feet had transformed not only Jamal's life but also institutions, policies, and communities. The teen who had simply wanted to reach a science competition had become a catalyst for change across multiple systems. As Jamal prepared notes for his congressional testimony, he reflected on the paradox at the heart of his story, how an act of injustice, when met with dignity and supported by unexpected allies, had created openings for justice on a scale he could never have anticipated. Tomorrow, he would return to MIT to continue his studies in environmental engineering. The following week, he would visit Detroit to launch another clear-access installation. The month after that, Washington, D.C. awaited his testimony. The water purification system that had been his passion project was now reaching communities across the country, providing clean water to those who had been systematically denied this basic right. The future stretched before him, bright with possibility and purpose. What had begun as a single confrontation on an airplane had become a movement for accountability, access, and change. In his final remarks at the conference earlier that day, Jamal had shared the philosophy that now guided his work: innovation without justice is just technology. Justice without innovation is just talk. Together, they can transform our world. Jamal's story teaches us that dignity cannot be taken, only surrendered. When faced with discrimination, his composed response and unwillingness to accept unjust treatment created a powerful ripple effect that transformed not just one airline, but an entire industry. The incident reveals how systemic racism often goes unchallenged until someone refuses to accept it as normal. This story also highlights the importance of unexpected allies. The Hendersons, who initially viewed Jamal with suspicion, became his strongest advocates after witnessing injustice firsthand. Thomas Carter's decision to use his privilege as a pilot to intervene demonstrates how those with power can become crucial agents of change. Perhaps most importantly, Jamal's journey shows that addressing discrimination isn't just about individual incidents, it requires systemic transformation. The creation of the Jamal Washington Protocol ensures that his experience leads to protection for countless others who might otherwise face similar treatment without recourse. In our everyday lives, we all face choices when witnessing injustice: remain silent or speak up, accept the status quo or demand better. As Jamal proved, one person's refusal to accept discrimination can spark changes that benefit generations to come. Have you ever witnessed discrimination and wished you had spoken up? What would you have done if you were seated next to Jamal on that flight? This story shows how courage and dignity can transform injustice into positive change. If you found Jamal's journey inspiring, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more powerful stories of resilience and triumph. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that their voice matters. Comment below with your own experiences of standing against discrimination or times you wish you had. Thank you for joining me on this powerful journey. remember that small actions can create massive change when we stand together against injustice. See you in the next video.